Should we move on to the second team?
We shall, and you can start us off.
Sure. If you're gonna jot it down, just tell me when
I
you're
am
good
gonna jot it
afterwards.
down, but let me get ready for it. Okay,
Yeah.
I am ready.
All right. I'll start at the back again. So in goal for me, I've got Daniel. Then
Yes, you do.
left back to right back, I have got Diego Palacios. I've got Yamar. I've got Matt Miazga, and I've got Brandon By. Then
Okay.
in the two midfield spots, I've got Hector Herrera and Obina Nwobodo.
I'm good. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was waiting for confirmation. Three attacking spots. I've gone for Carl's Heel, Hani Mukhtar, and Christian Espinosa. And
Okay.
then at striker, I've gone for Julian Carranza.
Ooh. Okay. And we'll talk about that. We have lots of differences here,
That's
and
fine.
I will need to explain
Oh boy,
a
here we
lot of
go.
a lot of things because there are
Here we
some things
go.
there's some things here we need to talk about. All right. So in goal, Joe Willis. At right back, Brooks Lennon. Center backs, Zach McGraw from Portland and Rodriguez from San Jose. Left back, Nuhu Tolo, my boy Nuhu. At the 6 role, I've gone with Keaton Parks. At the 10 role, we've got Luciano Acosta. And here's where I need to explain things. When I looked at things, anybody who played in a 5 back as an outside back was considered a left mid, left wing player because they were more attacking than they were defensive. So at left wing, I've got Alvaro Barreal.
I knew you were going
At
with
the
that as soon as you started the
yeah,
explanation.
at the right wing, I've gone with Bongi Hlongwane from Minnesota. And then the two strikers in this shape are Georgios Giacomakis and our Lord and Savior Brian White. Brian White in the second team because of goat things. Um, just a note on Joe Willis here, and then you can tell me all about your completely not biased pick of your
What are you
goalkeeper of the
talking about?
year in the
There's no
second
proof of
spot.
bias. No proof.
Yeah, I don't need proof to figure it out, homie. All right. So I've got Joe Willis here, who was the sixth most saves out of what I do. I cut it in half, didn't I? So um out of 13. So 6 out of 13. Second best save percentage, second best goals against average, fifth most shutouts, fifth in our favorite stat, PSXG plus minus. And he was joint third in least goals conceded for anybody who had over 1,800 minutes. So thought it was very good. Again, goalkeepers are funny to look at because your defense plays a big role in how successful you are. But I think Joe Willis, as always, is a solid choice. You can feel his absence when he's not there, and he performed really really well in all of the stats that we had. So
I'm not. So here's the thing. I'm not going to be able to comment on a lot of yours because we're more similar than you think. We're just a little bit different.
no,
So
I'm okay with that. We don't need to drag this out for 4 hours.
yeah. So I will
Just talk to me about
say
Daniel.
yeah. Let's just go. Let's just jump right into it. Like why waste time when we can talk about our favorite ever statistic in PSXG plus minus? Because Daniel is number two in that stat behind Roman Berkey. I mean,
That's the
Roman
only.
Berkey
That's
was
I. So hold on. I'm going to cut you off because I could have told you if you told me 3 weeks ago we were doing this episode and we were picking three goalkeepers. All I would have had to do was go on to FBref, look at the top three PSXG plus minus, and just pick those three because that is how you run goalkeepers. I knew that was going to happen. God,
it's
you're
not the
so
only thing I look at.
boring.
It's not the only thing I look at. Believe me.
But it's the most important thing. You're
It is
boring, dude.
to me, it's the most individual stat for a goalkeeper. I think other things can be influenced by their defense in front of them. You look at clean sheets and clean sheet percentage, there's four other, I mean, forget four. There's essentially 10 other people on the field who influence that stat, but it's like PSXG plus minus is strictly the goalkeeper. Like that's just
Well,
how much they are
let
able
me
to
ask you
individually
something.
influence.
Let me ask you something. If a goalkeeper has a low PSXG plus minus because their defense is so good that they only get easy shots, and the goals that they don't save are the ones they shouldn't save anyway, does that not influence anything?
Well,
I
if
mean, we can argue the semantics of statistics all day long. Please continue on anything else about Daniel other than the fact that he had a good
no,
PSXG plus minus.
you came from my favorite statistic. I have to defend it.
You have to defend.
If they're not saving shots that shouldn't be savable, it's not going to hurt their PSXG plus minus because the XG is going to
Correct.
be like it's not going to hurt that much. But if they let in a soft one that they should save, that's where it'll hurt them. So I feel like even if they're not like, yes, I guess it could potentially hurt them if they're facing less shots overall because they just have less time to accumulate more PSXG plus minus. But that again, like I tried to look at other things besides that. That's obviously, I'm sure if you've listened to this podcast enough, you know that that's like my go-to statistic for it. And because I don't feel like we should discredit the goalkeepers that have to do more work. Like they're doing more to help their team. And just because, like, I don't think it should hurt a goalkeeper if they're not getting as many shots, but I also don't think we should just disregard a goalkeeper that's putting in more work and doing a lot more because their defense sucks. So, like Daniel, if you look at him statistically, like clean sheet wise, he's not very high up there. He only has a 24% clean sheet percentage and only 5 clean sheets. Some of that is because he didn't play the full season. JT Marcinkowski got some games as well. He only had 21 appearances, about 1,900 minutes, but he was fourth highest in save percentage. I mean, he's essentially exactly the same in save percentage as Joe Willis. And per 90 saves, he's got much more than Joe Willis. I definitely think in that regard, Joe Willis is benefiting from better defense. And same thing with the clean sheet percentage. So it's a close conversation, but I think in the individual statistics, I liked Daniel a bit more than Joe Willis. But like I said, I'm reserving judgment on Joe Willis, and I'm sure that gives away stuff, but I'm reserving judgment.
Daniel was sixth in my stats.
I'm surprised he even
He
made your stats because he didn't have a ton of minutes.
so the no he made where'd he
Less
go?
than 2K minutes.
Yeah, it was 1856. 1800 was my cutoff, so he was in.
Okay.
Ninth most saves.
Yeah,
10th,
but that's because he barely
10th,
made it on the list.
right? 10th out of 14 in goals against average, which is a stress stat.
Yeah.
14th in shutouts, right? He
Yeah.
was.
I mean, that's gonna
He
hurt him
wasn't.
because
Yeah, like I said, he was great in PSXG. He was great in save percentage. He was great in passing percentage. So there are things that he did well, but there are other things that he did not do so well.
yeah, and I
Um,
think in my opinion, those things were probably not his fault. But that's just me.
I wonder why. Predicted him for goalkeeper
Well,
of the year.
he's not winning the award. All right, let's just say that. He's not winning it, but I think he should be in the conversation. He's not going to win it though. It's clear who's winning the award. We already talked about him. But anyway, should we talk about the defense?
Yeah. So I went with Brooks Lennon, excuse me. He actually is better defensively than you would expect. So third least dribble by player. And now that I think about it, maybe that number there is because he was so far forward, people
Yeah,
just
he's like in the
never had
box. How do you
chance.
get dribbled by in the box? The
Maybe.
goalkeeper is the
But
only one that could dribble by him.
anyways, sixth best tackle success rate. So when he is going in for challenges, fifth most interceptions, first most clearances, fifth most successful dribbles, second best passing percentage, most accurate short balls, and most crosses completed. So very good in important areas. But he was poor in things like crosses blocked, times dispossessed. which brought him down again just a little bit lower than Shaq Moore, not significantly. So I was happy putting him here in the 2 spot. I think he's earned that with his ability to play forward, which is always a key part of my outside backs in my system. But also he's been more decent than most people think defensively.
He was the first guy out for me on my teams. He was
Okay.
number 4. Because, and I think this is just because we were looking at different defensive statistics. As I already mentioned, like, I think it's very obvious with Brooks Lennon. If you watched him at all, you know that he just bombs. I mean, he started as a winger. Like, he was a winger before he became a fullback. So his tendency, of course, is going to be to get really far forward, and he's always involved in the attack. And it's definitely super helpful for the team, but he doesn't do a lot defensively. I mean, you talked about tackle success rate, but in terms of number of tackles, he had 1.13 per 90, which was 13th percentile out of fullbacks. So he might be winning a lot, but he doesn't really go in for a lot of tackles, it seems. Interceptions.
I had him. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you out there. I had him middle of the pack, basically. I had him 8 out of 15.
That
8
probably
out of 16, excuse me.
That's probably because he played 2,900 minutes this season. I
Also
bet
fair.
he would be lower if he was per 90.
I would love to redo this with, and you know I will, by the way, because I don't have anything else better to do. I'm gonna redo this as a per 90 and see what it looks like.
It shouldn't take too long to do it per 90. Just divide everything by 90.
Oh, I was talking about per game. Anyways,
you can come back to
your
your statistic anyway.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think he, in terms of your statistics, I definitely think he benefited by playing 2,900 minutes this season. And from what I'm seeing from a lot of fullbacks, they did not play nearly that much. They were like 2,300, even like 2,000. So that definitely helps him. But per 90, his defensive statistics were pretty low, except clearances. He was 67th percentile in clearances. But I mean, yeah, I know his role is to go forward and be in the attack, and he does it very well. So I have no problems with him being in there because he serves his purpose pretty much exactly how you would want him to.
Okay. Let's go to left back then, and then we'll go into the middle. Nuhu for me, 7th in tackles, and let me pull up really quick the number of players that I have here. Out of 14, so 7th in tackles, 4th least dribble by, 5th best tackle success rate, most clearances, 4th most crosses blocked, 2nd most successful dribbles in the attacking phase, 5th least dispossessed, 2nd best passing percentage, 3rd most passes total. So he was passing the ball and passing it well. Again, Diego Palacios was just better in pretty much every stat that we just listed there, but he was pretty good in most of the other ones. So, again, I think Nuhu has been, again, one of the better left backs in the league for near half a decade now, probably. This isn't a shock to me. Seattle's been good. They've been, what are we at here? We're looking at, in terms of their defensive abilities, they're one of the more defensively stout teams here with.
Yeah, they're very solid defensively.
Yeah, what are they at? I'm just going to get a number here. 32 goals against, which I believe.
That is best in the Western Conference.
Best in the West and one less than our friends in Nashville who are at 31. So it doesn't shock me that I've got a lot of Seattle defenders in here. I think they've been really, really good.
Yeah, I got to see it live. Not to brag.
Wow.
I'm not going to add too much more on Palacios because you covered it a lot in the first team. But yeah, I mean, he's in my opinion, he's right there 1-2 with DeJuan Jones. I think for me, Palacios was a little bit lower attacking wise than I was kind of expecting him to be. Is a lot of his per 90 percentiles were a little bit low in the attack. I mean, he was still pretty good in shot creating action, 76 percentile, but it almost feels like once he got into the final third, he wasn't involved as much. Really not involved in the goals and assists. And obviously that's not super important. He's a fullback. Like, he's not supposed to be getting the goals and assists. But I think DeJuan Jones was a little bit better there, and I felt he was a bit more well-rounded. Very involved in the build-up, had 97 percentile in passes attempted, and 92nd percentile in progressive passes. And then was surprising. Actually, no, not surprising, but was really, really solid defensively in terms of certain statistics. His tackles, he was 99th percentile in tackles, 99th percentile in interceptions, 86th percentile in blocks. I think he was clear at least number 2 for me at the left back spot. And I am very much open for the conversation of him being in the first team as well. But I put him just below DeJuan Jones in the second team.
Okay. Brandon Bye is
Brandon Bye was never going to stand a chance in your statistics because he did not have a ton of minutes this year. I think
that's what it seems like.
I think he probably just qualified for your list because he has just over 1,500 minutes. But like compare him to Brooks Lennon, he has 1,200 less minutes than Brooks Lennon. He was never going to stand a chance to beat out Brooks Lennon for a spot here because he only had like 1,665 minutes. But
yeah,
I don't think he was anything like crazy otherworldly, but again, it felt like a similar situation in DeJuan Jones. He was just solid, in my opinion, across the board per 90. He was dominant in the air, 90th percentile in aerials won, 86th percentile in clearances. So he was good in some statistics defensively. He was not as good in some of the other ones, but in terms of helping with the build-up, 74th percentile in progressive carries, 68th percentile touches, and then in the attack as well, 84th percentile in non-penalty goals. And I don't even want to try and say whatever the statistic is, but he's like 82nd percentile in non-penalty XG plus SX.
you need to relax with you.
I don't determine what's in the statistics that pop up in the scouting report, but in my opinion, I think he was pretty solid across the board. I would definitely be open if someone made a good conversation about moving him a bit lower, but he was solid in my opinion, and I think he played just enough minutes for me to consider him.
Interesting. Moving into the 6 role for me.
Wait, did we talk about center backs?
No, you're right. We didn't. Rodriguez, I think you touched on him a little bit before. Most tackles won, 3rd most interceptions, 5th most clearances, 7th most block shots, most headers won. The dude all over the place, right? You're great defender. I'm not going to add too much on him. Zach McGraw was an interesting one in my little list here, and I really was happy to see somebody different because that's how these things roll. So let me just pull up this guy's stats here. 8th most tackles, 9th best tackle success rate, most clearances, 6th most block shots, 5th most headers won, 10th most offsides won. And again, a lot of those are in important stressed areas, right? The headers won is stressed, interceptions is stressed. He was 11th in there. And then tackle success rate being 9th. So in the stress stats, he was very good, and that's what brought him in there again for how I want to play my system. He checks all the boxes for me where I'd be confident having him around.
Am I allowed to make changes to my team?
You do whatever you want. You're gonna go ahead and take my team. Go right ahead. I don't care.
I do. Zach McGraw looks great. I think I definitely should have had him in here. I kind of figured I saw that he was high on like who scored when I was looking a little bit on who scored. I kind of figured that he was high though because he's very good attacking wise as a center back. And I know that like the attacking numbers really like inflate their ratings and stuff. But his defensive numbers as a center back are fantastic. Like honestly, he might have some of the best defensive statistics for center back in the league. So, I mean, we can keep it however you can put the editing however you want it, but I would drop Yamar from this team and put Zach McGraw there. So I would have McGraw and Matt Miazga.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would just drop Yamar to my third team. But I mean, going off of that, I mean, I think you kind of covered everything from McGraw, but even from an FBref scouting report perspective, he's 71st percentile or higher in all of their like five defensive, like I guess key defensive statistics that they list there, like tackles, interceptions, blocks, clearances, aerials. He was phenomenal. He's very, very good. So I definitely want to get him in there. I would put him second team with Miazga. And you already kind of talked about Miazga, but I definitely think Miazga Mosquera was probably, in my opinion, kind of interchangeable. But Mosquera, in terms of the per 90 on the scouting report, was a little bit better in some of those defensive statistics that they listed, the tackles, interceptions, blocks, clearances, whatever. So that's why I had leaned more towards Mosquera. But again, that could just be a product of the style of play. And you looked at certain other statistics that I think benefited maybe the way that he plays better. So I'm fine either way, flipping one of those two between first team, second team, but I've got Miazga on the second team.
So super interesting. Sorry, we'll kind of go off on a tangent here. I just did not by per 90, but by per game analysis of the team at the right back spot just for fun. Akapo, Brandon By, and I don't know who your third guy is, but Caligari from LA Galaxy, who you don't know. You don't know that guy
I know
exists.
him now. I know him now.
Now you know. That's good. Were three players who were then the top of the list. But here's what I'll say. I think to be a part of a best 11, you need to play. You can't be a guy like Olivier Mbaizo, for example, who splits time with Nathan Harriel. Mbaizo might be ridiculous in the 15 of the 30 games that Philly play. But if he's only playing 15 games, I'm not putting anywhere near my first team. So I totally understand the way that you now analyze things. However, I think the minutes played and the total that you have are important.
So would it change for you if rather than missing games because you were rotated out, you missed games because you were injured? Does that change the lack of minutes perspective to you?
No, not even remotely.
Okay.
Because if you're hurt, so here's the other. Let me ask you this then: would it matter if you were transferred out of the league early?
Well, I didn't consider any guy that's not in the league anymore.
And that's my point, right? Realistically, on my goalkeeper list, Jordy Petrovic was third.
Oh, 100%, he's on the list.
Correct, but I didn't put him in because he didn't finish the season.
Yeah.
So for me, being able to play throughout the entire season is a big part of
it. That's fair. I mean, I definitely think I feel like you could set a minutes cutoff at some point, and then you can kind of consider it across the board evenly.
Right. And that's kind of what I did is when I set that minutes cutoff, and maybe it's a touch low, but I mean, I only have 16 right backs in this list. So it's not like I've included everybody, but I also haven't included, not a ton. So I've cut it off at a fair point where I think, okay, if you're in here, I'll include you. It won't throw off our rankings too bad. Like if I brought people in who played 4 games and had like 2 tackles, right? Like, all right, well now everybody has moved up a spot and your average is going to skew. But for me, I think that the minute cutoff makes it fair to analyze totals because there are players who have less minutes. So I'll pick Caligari, for example, who is 11th in minutes, but 6th in tackles total. So it's not like it's a complete off the line of that. But that's just me. Anyways, I feel like we're waffling way too much on how we analyze stats and not talking.
This is gonna be a super long episode. It's because we're stats nerds.
This has turned into an analysis. This has turned into a statistical analysis, and
this is our worst nightmare. We should have never done this episode. We're not even. We didn't even get to the 6/8s yet on the second team.
So bad. We're so bad. All right, at the 6th spot, I went with Keaton Parks, and the 6th spot for me was
interesting because again, I had a lot of really tough calls to make, and it as we mentioned before, the number 8s are kind of out. So Hector Herrera, who you put in, who I think is a great shout, doesn't make my team, which hurts because what I need to do is find a way to analyze proper number 8s and then pick from there. So we'll go into Keaton Parks, who was in my top 6, and I actually allowed him to jump players to be in this spot because I wasn't sold on a lot of them. So Keaton Parks, 6th least dribble by, 5th best tackle success rate, 9th least cards, 3rd most headers won, 8th best passing percentage in a group of what looks to be 30. So top third of most of the key stats there. I've always been a fan of Keaton Parks. I hate watching him play for City because I wish he would play on a real field because he would be so good. But he's a very, very good ball playing number 6, and I think he fits into that system really well. So that's my pick for 6. But please talk to me about your 8-10s.
I mean, I'll talk to you about my 6-8s. Hector Herrera. I think he didn't touch too much on him in terms of his season, but he was unbelievably good going forward this year. I mean, he's playing a very similar role, or I guess a pretty similar role to Leuven, and that I think he is in that center mid spot, but really pushes forward and is such a key part in the attack. I mean, he was outstanding across the board in terms of percentiles, how he ranks to other midfielders. 98th percentile in shot creating actions, 98th percentile in assists, like 93rd percentile in shots. It was really good with passing as well. 99th percentile in passes attempted, 96th percentile in progressive passes. And the thing that helped me determine to put him in the second team was, while he's definitely not a super strong defender, it looked like he put a little effort into defending, which boosted him ahead of one other player that I put in my third team, which I'll talk about when we get to the third team. But he was 97th percentile in blocks, which was way higher than I expected. 71st percentile in aerials won, which was shocking to me. I mean, those were his 2 bigger statistics. I mean, I didn't expect him to be super strong defensively, and he wasn't, but there was more there compared to other players who were kind of in a similar role in terms of like the playmaking, get forward 8 in their team. So that's kind of what boosted him a little bit ahead of some of the other guys and got him in the second team for me. And then Nwobodo. So I feel like if you look at the full game for Nwobodo, he's not going to look great because he's not a dominant passer. He's not going to get in the final third and have goals and assists. But what he is brought in to do, he is dominant in. He is fantastic defensively. And that is what he's brought in to do. He's 91st percentile in tackles, 96th percentile in tackles won, 88th percentile in dribblers tackled, 96th percentile in interceptions. I mean, there are statistics across the board defensively that you can look at for him, and he will be high up there. So he was fantastic defensively, and I wanted to highlight that despite the fact that if you look at him in terms of well-roundedness, he's not going to look great, but for what his role is, he was dominant, and I think he deserved to be in one of the top teams because of that.
So I will tell you, Nwobodo for me was right on the bubble, and the thing that let him down was being 20th in times dispossessed, which is a 1.7 modifier for me, which is really big. Because I do 1.5, 1.7, and 2. That is what brought him down. If he isn't, let me see, if I just put him here as 10, for example. Yeah, if I put him at 10 and he brings his passing percentage up to 15, he's in my team. But the passing percentage, as you mentioned, the passing percentage and that specific stress stat
is what brought him down for me. Oh wait,
Yeah, and I get that. I understand that.
Yeah.
Keaton Parks looked way better than I was expecting. He was super well-rounded, had a super strong season.
yeah, like I said, Keaton's great. But I don't disagree with your choices, by the way. I think Nwobodo is the best defensive midfielder for that role because they pair him with somebody who I'm going to give an honorable mention to in the third team who can do the rest of the work he doesn't need to do. Then you go with Herrera, who, again, Artur is the guy who goes in and does the dirty work. He's a little bit better at the other stuff than Nwobodo is, but he wins the ball, he gives it to Double H and says, go play football. And they do. That, like, you can see that there are pairings there, and these players who are in here are very good in pairings. You leave them as lone sixes, as shown in my group, you might struggle. So, don't disagree with any of your choices. By the way, I think they've been really, really good. So,
Oh, thank you.
for now, like I said, you'll mess some things up.
This is way too wholesome.
You'll mess some things up in the third team, I'm sure. I talked about Luciano Acosta as my 10, and I said I'd get there. And again, Almada is just better by like 1 or 2 spots in every single thing. And I told you that I think if you took Luciano out, FCC are still good. They're not Shield winners, but they're good. If you take Almada out of Atlanta, I think they basically crumble. So that's why I've got him at the second team. Talk to me about any of you. Actually, let me give you my 3 left wing, right wing.
Yeah.
You can give me your 3, and then we'll talk about the strikers. So left wing, Barreal, again, I talked about anybody who played as a left wing back or a right wing back really was looked at as a left winger or a right winger for me, for the most part. Barreal in that group, 3rd most fouls drawn, 4th most shots taken, 3rd most goals scored, 5th most dribbles completed, 7th least dispossessed player, most crosses completed, 5th most assists. The attack blew down that side for them. And you could tell it was really, really, I'll say interesting that FCC, they started a second team against Red Bull, and they were abysmal, dude. They were so bad for 60 minutes. Barreal and Acosta came on, and it just spark flipped. They were unbelievable game changers, and that's how I know Barreal should be in one of these teams because, oh my goodness, these guys were crazy.
Yeah, I feel like I kind of have him hard done because there just wasn't exactly like a wing back spot in any of my teams, and I don't remember where we left off. I think I was saying
Sorry,
something about I can't remember what we were talking about.
You were talking about
Oh,
Barreal.
Barreal.
Yep.
Yeah. I think I kind of did him hard done here just because I don't have any wing back spots in any of my teams, and I definitely think that's his role. Like I don't think he's a fullback. I don't think he would work in a 4 in the back, but he is like I think he's probably unquestionably the best wing back in the league at the moment.
Yeah, no, 100%. Dude is unreal. Everything went down his side. Like I said, they brought those 2 guys on. I turned to the FCC fan next to me. I go, we're going to lose this game because they bring such a dynamic change that I think I was surprised we handled it. On the right side, Bongi Hlongwane, right? I think he was listed as a right-sided player. He drew the most fouls of the players that I analyzed, and I'll just quick check here that it is a total of 18 players. So of the 18 players, most fouls drawn, most shots taken, 3rd most goals, 4th most dribbles, 4th most assists. Again, he had that span of time where he was like Minnesota's best player, bar none, before Reynoso came in. And then Reynoso and Pukki came in and he kind of balanced out. But yeah, he was super, super good. Again, had other things that he was very good at, but what kept him out of that first team was that he was dispossessed
the most amount of times of any player.
Yeah, I really felt like he had a stronger season statistically, but then I looked and he only had 8 goals, 3 assists, which was way lower than I was expecting it to be.
Right,
And I know
because he
he's
came up and he blew up for like 2 weeks.
so I feel like it hurt him because I think his hottest point was Leagues Cup. I feel like he was red hot in Leagues
You
Cup.
know what? That might have been it. He was a Leagues Cup baller.
He
That
was,
might,
and then I think he cooled down once it went back to MLS.
yeah,
I mean,
that's totally
it sounds like he does the little things that aren't caught in the, typical goals and assists, but I still weighed that pretty heavily because I think he's an attacker, and I think at the end of the day, your job is to get involved in the goals and assists and score the goals. So him being at 8 goals, 3 assists, and he might have some second assists in there that I'm not counting, but it felt a little low for me to get him in there. But one thing that's shocking, he is an amazing defensive winger. His defensive statistics are phenomenal for wingers. It's crazy. He must be tracking back a lot.
Red Bull better be looking at him then, because that's right up their alley.
All right, so is that your 3 in the attack?
Yes, those are my 3.
Okay. I'm going to go just really quick through Hani and Christian Espinosa because you covered them in more detail already. But
Yep.
Hani was a tough one to leave out of the first team. I think, it probably was down to a shape thing, but I felt that Lucci and Almada were a little bit better than Hani this season. And I don't think Hani had a bad season by any metrics. But I think those two did a little bit more than what Hani did this season. Certainly in terms of the passing, dribbles, creation part of the game. I think that's still a strong point for Hani, but I feel like Hani played more as a striker than like an Almada or Lucci, who probably drops a bit deeper. And so that made me put him on the second team as opposed to the first. If I went double striker, he would definitely be in my first team as well. But his non-penalty goal percentage was a lot lower than I expected. He was 54th percentile in forwards for non-penalty goals. So I know he has 15, but I think there must be a decent number of them that are penalties this season. And we know how you
Could be.
feel about penalties.
I have a feeling if I'm gonna yell at you about anything, it's gonna be about in your third team, because I have a feeling I know what you're gonna do, and I'm gonna have to yell at you.
I don't think you are going to yell at me.
I go change your team so I can yell at you.
Okay, I'm sorry. And then the one I did want to talk about, well, I didn't talk about Christian Espinosa, but I think it's kind of self-explanatory. Espinosa is one of the best wingers in the league this season. He's been dominant all year. He's a huge part of that San Jose attack that's getting them into the playoffs, like I predicted. And then Carlos Heel is the one I wanted to talk about a little bit more because we haven't talked about him. I feel like definitely not his strongest season. I think we've seen better from him. I think his MVP season was better, even if he didn't deserve that MVP. Justice for Hani Mukhtar. But he still had a really good season. I mean, he's 99th percentile in progressive passes. He is 98th percentile in shot creating actions. He is 82nd percentile in assists. Like, he's still the same playmaking maestro that we've known him to be. It wasn't his strongest season, but he still had 11 goals, 7 assists. And I think he only had 2 pens. So he's not racking up the goals from penalties. Like, he's scoring open play goals. I mean, I don't know how many of them are like free kicks or whatever, but he's scoring a lot of non-penalty goals. He's creating just as much as you would expect for him to create. So he got into the second team for me. I mean, I think there's an argument that you can maybe swap him out for somebody and drop him to the third team. I don't think he's in the conversation for the first team, but I was happy to get him in there for the second team.
I reserve my judgment.
I figured.
Yeah. Let's talk strikers. You threw in Julian Carranza, which I like.
Yeah.
I like that one. Tell me about it.
I think I went with Julian Carranza over 2 strikers in my third team, mainly because I felt like Carranza was a little bit more well-rounded in the striker spot. I think there are certain things that the other two strikers are better at in terms of the way they play striker, but I felt like I really liked that Carranza was super well rounded. He was 85th percentile in non-penalty goals. He's 82nd percentile in assists, 73rd percentile in passes completed. And I know the defensive statistics aren't important for a forward, but he was heavily involved in the defensive numbers as well. I mean, he was 89th percentile tackles, 88th in blocks, 83rd in interceptions, and he was clearly heavily involved in some kind of must have been pressing system, or he was dropping low or something. But I felt like he was doing all the little things and getting fully involved in the attack. And just a personal opinion for me, but I just like that a little bit more than the other two guys. So I went with Carranza here for a second team.
All for it, dude. All for it. For me, I've only got two strikers here. One of them is Giacomakis. The dude's got 15 goals in like 20 appearances. Like, it is unbelievably dumb.
He's putting up Chicho Aranjo numbers.
Yeah, that's exactly what I thought about him. And he's got 23% of Atlanta goals. So all that stuff I talked about before, where it's like, oh, minutes should matter. They do. And he's outperforming the minutes that he's played, which is absurdity. And then Brian White, dude, my guy from the good old MLS Super Draft, 3rd round from Duke. I think it was actually a first rounder, but anyways, 15 goals, 28% of all of Vancouver's goals this year. Listen, when you want to be good, you need a striker who's going to score goals. You can ask Red Bull. They know all about it, or the lack of it. And Brian White has found his form in this team under Vanni Sartini. He deserves the recognition for the work that he's put in, because he got sent away from Red Bull because they thought he wasn't going to amount to anything. He wasn't going to be good enough. They wanted to get money for him. Vancouver believed in him. He put in the work, and now he is one of the best strikers in MLS. I'm really happy to say that. As much as I would love for him to be in our kit, happy to see him grow from where he was to where he is.
I think you're a homer and you're just backing your boys.
Cry.